Hey everyone, this is Brooks Popwell from Pure Life Ministries. You're about to hear part of our bi-weekly podcast, Purity for Life. Hope you enjoy. In this segment, Karla, who's a part of the senior leadership here at Pure Life Ministries, shares how she persevered through all the trials that came from her husband's sexual sin and how she watched God restore her marriage. Karla, when I think about trying to give wives some answers who might be questioning God and what He's doing in their marriage, I think about your story and how you have had to trust the Lord through all of it. So why don't we start by you're giving us a little background and tell us about how you met your husband.
Well, I grew up in a Christian home, very godly parents who taught me about the Lord from the time I was very young. I went to a Christian college after high school, and then I worked for 2 different missions organizations. And when I did meet my husband, it was at church, and we knew each other for about 15 years before we started dating. And we both wanted to serve the Lord. We both sat under the same preaching, teaching, went to Christian seminars together. So we knew we really had something in common that was just a life that wanted to serve the Lord.
Yeah, so at this point, no indication of anything wrong going on, and you must have really had high hopes for the future because of how this relationship started. What were your ideas of how marriage would be as you guys started life together?
Well, we really were hoping that we would both be serving the Lord full time. Even in the process of planning our wedding, we had gotten introduced to a Christian organization who was looking for Christian counselors, and that was my husband's field of work. So we really expected that we could be more effective serving the Lord as a married couple than each one of us would be individually. And so I was looking forward to a marriage that would would be very fulfilling for me because I had trusted the Lord to bring the right man into my life. I was looking forward to just that companionship and just having a godly husband who would just be a good husband and potentially a good father to any children we might have, and just that we would really be living for the Lord in all that we did.
Those are certainly the things I think any Christian woman would be looking for and hoping for in a marriage. But I know it wasn't very long after you guys were married that you began to notice things that weren't quite right. Can you tell me some about what were some of the first things you were seeing?
Well, very early on, I sensed that he would go into long periods of withdrawal, it seems like, where he would be very quiet, very hard to reach, hard to talk to. He could never give me a reason why. I would ask what was wrong, but he would always tell me that nothing was wrong, of course. We would be constantly arguing about, household duties or time spent away from home, how much was, correct. He immersed himself in his work. He took on a position with his work where he had to be gone almost every weekend. So he would retreat into his work environment. I would go home and stay with my parents for the weekend. And it was like we were still living under the same roof, but almost in 2 different worlds completely. Yet all the while we were maintaining this facade that we were the perfect Christian couple, perfectly happy, and that everything was fine. So I knew something was wrong, but I really couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. There was no outward sin that I was aware of that I could point to as being something, but you just know somehow, I guess from the Lord maybe, that something is wrong.
Man, well, that has to be a point when you would have started to question God, I think, and ask hard questions about why is this going this way? I was expecting it to be better. Am I right? I mean, I would think that would be what was going through your mind.
Well, of course, because I had waited a long time before I got married because I wanted the Lord to bring the right one into my life. And so now that he did, I was really beginning to question, was this the right one? Was this God's plan? Have I made a big mistake here? But even in the midst of my questionings and my doubts, the Lord was working things out behind the scenes. One thing was that one day I was at the office and a magazine came in the mail to my desk, and it came to my desk because it wasn't addressed to anyone in particular in the organization, and it was the Unchained magazine from Pure Life Ministries. And for the first time, I felt when I read through that magazine and heard the programs of Pure Life Ministries and the men that had been set free, for the first time I had hope that maybe there was something out there that could help our marriage.
Now, you didn't know at the time that Ed was struggling with these things, but somehow this just struck a chord.
Exactly. And he had, at that point, he had shared a bit of some of his history, but I certainly didn't know the full picture at that point. I ordered Kathy Gallagher's book, and I began to read her advice to women who had been through the same things I was going through. And it really helped me to see that we need to keep our focus on the Lord during these times, even when nothing seems to be happening. And I remember one night I was just, I guess, to the end of my own self and my own resources, and I was on my face before the Lord, just crying out to Him. First of all, just asking Him to intervene in the marriage, to praying for my husband, praying that he would have a heart to change, but also at the same time, it was just a time of surrender to the Lord where I had to lay down that marriage and all the ideal expectations that I had of the marriage. And I remember saying to the Lord, if this is the way you want this marriage to be, then I accept it, and I am willing to just continue to be committed to Him, to my husband, and to just allow you to be the one that I am looking to for all of my needs.
Now, just to be clear, you weren't telling the Lord that you were okay with his sin, but I guess you knew that ultimately you would have to depend on the Lord to fix that, right?
That's correct. At this point, I didn't know the full extent of his sin. I just knew things weren't the way I wanted them to be, and that was what I had to lay down before the Lord.
Okay, well, what happened next in response to that prayer?
Well, it was probably only a few months later when my husband sat down with me one evening, and he confessed everything that he had been involved in over the last several years. And I'll admit I was devastated at first, but also relieved in a way to know that things were finally out in the open. And I remember him saying to me that night, he said, I am willing to do anything to deal with this problem. And the first response I think that I had was, would you be willing to go to Pure Life Ministries? Because that's where I really felt that he would have the answers, because it was through the Lord that he was going to have to come to victory and not any man-made program or self-help program.
Well, before we get to what happened through that program and after Ed went to Pure Life, I want to zero in on your experience in that time, because I know you did the Wives program as well while he was away, and that God kept working on you and ministering to you in this time. What were some of the things you learned?
Well, I learned, first of all, I believe what it really meant to be a follower of Jesus Christ. Like I said, I had grown up in the church, but I think my Christianity was more of a mental acknowledgement of the Lord, knowing about Him, reading about Him. But I came to learn that it has to be a personal relationship with Him, and He has to be real inside. And that happened for me when I did the Wives program. I also had a lot of pride. I had a lot of unrealistic expectations about what marriage should be. Fear of man was also a big issue for me. I was so self-conscious and worried about what others thought about me. And through the Wives program, I learned to be more concerned about the needs of others and how I could meet others' needs. And it was amazing when you're concentrating on the needs of others, your own self-consciousness just disappears. And so that was another one of the big things the Lord did for me when I was going through the program.
Well, how did this all turn out? Obviously, that's the big question that people would want to know. So can you share a little more of how life has been since Ed went through the residential program?
Yes, the Lord did a marvelous work in his life while he was here at Pure Life Ministries. He graduated in November of 2004 and came home for about 10 months. We were just intending to look for jobs in the local area to rebuild our life, so to speak, from a fresh start. But in July of the following year, we got a call from Pure Life Ministries wondering if we were willing to come back to serve as interns here and to serve in the ministry. And so we felt that was an answer to prayer because we really didn't know what the Lord had for us. But when that call came, we knew that He was calling us back here. And the Lord has restored our marriage. We no longer have those doubts or fears or periods of silence and nothing's hidden anymore. And so the Lord has given us a love for each other that we've never had before, one that's based on true godly love and not just our own interests. And so we've been serving here at Pure Life Ministries since 2005, and we're very grateful for all the Lord has done for us.
You mentioned that genuine love, and I can see that when I observe your lives. I also see such gratitude in you, and in one sense, I can see that would be an obvious thing because the Lord has done an amazing work in your marriage. But I know the gratitude is deeper than that. So can you share a little more of what that gratitude really involves for you?
Yes, it's not just that my marriage got fixed, but it's that the Lord has come into my life and my husband's life in a way that He is the center of everything. We're not just living for a happy, comfortable life in this world, but we now see that it's the Lord and the eternal matters that are much more important than anything we could ever hope for in this life.
Well, can you finish now with any closing thoughts you'd have for someone who is in the place that you were some 15 years ago?
Yes, I would definitely say that your best weapon is prayer, both for your husband and for yourself to have the ability to be able to endure through what might be very difficult circumstances at the time. But just know that the Lord is working behind the scenes, maybe in ways that you're not even aware of. And if you just keep looking to Him, He will be the one that will meet your needs and will be your security. He will be your comfort, and He will be the one that will be your stronghold during this time.
Thanks for listening. You can find Purity for Life on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Or just go to our website, purelifeministries.org/podcast.